Welcome to the most complete Elden Ring beginner guide on the internet. This guide will cover everything in the game, from the simple to the complex. By the time you finish this video, you'll understand every mechanic in the game, and without spoilers. I've timestamped the video so you can jump around or jump back to sections that you need later. With that out of the way, get comfortable, get a drink, and let's dive in. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do is start a new game, at which point it's going to ask you to choose your class. There are 10 classes to choose from in Elden Ring, so every archetype is fulfilled. Whether you want to play as a magic-slinging sorcerer, a katana-wielding samurai, or a shield-wielding paladin, every one of these starting classes can easily clear the entire game. And don't worry, the game does allow for respecs, so if you want to change your build up later in the game, you absolutely can do that. Vagabond here is going to start with a high amount of vigor, strength, and dexterity. Vigor is the stat that gives you life. The more vigor you have, the larger your health pool. Pretty much every build in this game is going to want to have about 60 vigor. Points beyond 60 really aren't going to do anything to increase your health in a significant way, so most people don't go past 60, but pretty much every build is going to go to 60 for that nice healthy life pool. Strength is going to be great for wielding the heavy weapons, like great swords, big hammers, that sort of thing. Dex is going to be great for swords, daggers, katanas. So this kind of sets you up to go in either direction. Next, we've got the warrior. The warrior is going to start with a ton of dex. If you know that you want to be a dex build and you want to be using fast weapons that attack quickly, dex is probably the one for you. This is going to even start you with dual wield weapons, which do tremendous damage. So if you're looking for a dual wield playstyle, this is the one to start with. The hero is going to start with 14 vigor. So that's going to give you a nice healthy life pool to start with. And you're going to start with 16 strength. So this is the one the game's saying, hey, do you want to use a massive greatsword? Like, you just know this is what you always play, and you're not wasting any points on intelligence, because who needs that when you're planning to unga bunga? Next up, we have the bandit, and the highest stat that the bandit starts with is arcane, and the more arcane you have, the more likely you are to find an item when you defeat an enemy. Now, I will say that almost every important item in this game is going to drop no matter what. You kill a certain mob and it's going to drop the item. You also get dex so that you can go that dex route, and you're going to start with a bow and a dagger. A bow is going to be nice to have because there's certain puzzles in this game where you can use a bow to deactivate a threat. It's also going to let you pull a single mob out of a group of mobs and kill them one at a time. Next up, we have the astrologer. This is your caster. You want to be a mage that casts spells that do big damage. The astrologer is what you want to play as. Before we continue, these massive videos are a massive undertaking, so if you could be so kind as to leave a comment, a like, or subscribe to the channel to let the algorithm know that you're enjoying it, that would be huge. Thank you so much. Another thing that helps a lot with these massive videos is sponsors. Do you ever just wish someone would hand you Amazon gift cards, a new smartphone, or even a new console? Well, you're in the right place, because today's sponsor is going to do exactly that. But more on that in a second. People love to meme on today's sponsor, but that doesn't change the fact that it has an almost unheard of 250 million downloads, while holding on to an incredible 4.7 out of 5-star rating. How does Raid achieve this? This game just keeps on getting better. It keeps on adding new champions, new skills, and new content for players to progress through. My favorite part is, just like Elden Ring, you've got millions of ways you can approach every single battle. You can choose different champions, utilize different buffs, heals, or attacks to find the ultimate combination to annihilate your enemies with. So why not try this game out for free and get a chance to win a smartphone, a console, or even Amazon gift cards? To join in, create an account using my link in the description or the QR code on screen. Then follow the instructions at summertavern.plarium.com. It doesn't stop there though. On top of that, everyone can get 2 months of free YouTube Premium subscription by downloading Raid before July 17th, playing for at least 5 days, and hitting level 20 within 30 days. It's the best time to jump into Raid ever. If you use my link or QR code, you also get Epic Champion Tyrell, and after you reach level 25, you also get a pack that includes Epic Rector Draith. Use promo code SummerTavern to get silver and more. Come find my clan, Vegeta Best Arc 8888, and good luck on the new smartphone, console, and Amazon gift cards. Next up, we have the astrologer. This is your caster. You want to be a mage that casts spells that do big damage. The astrologer is what you want to play as. If you like being a glass cannon, this is the one for you. You're going to start with a ton of mind, 15 mind. This stat is what determines how much mana you have, or in this game, it calls it FP. FP is the resource you use to cast your spells. It's also going to start with a lot of intelligence. Intelligence is what you're going to need a lot of to wear the best staves in the game. You're going to have to wear a staff to cast spells, and your damage is therefore going to scale off of your intelligence. So more intelligence equals more damage, more mind equals more cast of the spell without running out of mana, or as it calls it, FP. You'll notice you don't have very much vigor, so you're going to have to pump that on your own, and you get a bit of dexterity. Now, dexterity does play an interesting role in a caster's setup because the more dex you have, the faster you cast. However, you do not need to put a ton of points into dexterity because there are items that will increase your cast speed and they'll help get you to max cast speed without putting a ton of points into dexterity. So you can put some points into dex if you feel like you want to cast faster sooner, but you don't need to put tons of points there because there are items that will get you to that cap without putting a heavy investment in dex. Next up, we have the Prophet. The Prophet is going to be your incantation class. Now, trying to describe the difference between a spellcaster and an incantation caster to someone is pretty difficult because there is a lot of overlap. They're both mages. The astrologer is going to use sorceries, and these are most times going to excel at doing big damage very quickly in a very similar style throughout the variety of them that exist, whereas incantations are known for having a wide variety of flavors and effects. You also don't have to use a staff, and instead you can use a seal, which is going to make it feel and look like you're casting your abilities with your hands, whereas as the astrologer using sorceries, your abilities are going to come out of your staff as you're casting them. So hand casting, staff casting, it's really up to you which one you want to go. And remember, you can always change your mind with a respec down the line. Next, we have the Samurai. The Samurai is a really popular starting choice because it's going to start with 12 vigor, 13 endurance, 12 strength, and 15 dexterity. These are all good stats for somebody that wants to run a melee class. And it's the only one that starts with a weapon that has a bleed proc, which is really useful in early game rune farming. You're going to have a nice health pool. You're going to have a ton of endurance. Endurance is going to be what determines how much stamina you have. So how many times can you dodge roll before you're out of stamina? How many times can you block before you're out of stamina? How long can you sprint? Not only that, endurance is also going to determine how much weight you can carry before your character hits the next threshold. Weight is really important in this game, and your weight is determined not by the items that are in your inventory, but by the items that you're wearing. So if you're wearing really heavy plate armor, that's going to make your weight go way up. Endurance is what lets you wear the heavier gear without being punished for it. And perhaps the most popular part of this starting class is that you start with a weapon that can proc bleed. Bleed is really big in this game because the damage that it does is based on the enemy's health pool. So if you fight something with a ton of health and you cause a bleed proc, it's going to do a ton of damage, which works out perfectly because when you're fighting something with a massive health pool, you want to do a massive amount of damage. Next up, we've got the Prisoner, which is going to start with a high amount of dex and a high amount of intelligence. This would maybe be useful for someone that wants to go as a battle mage, melee caster, which is not the most popular setup in this game. It's probably going to be one of the more difficult ones to effectively pull off, so it's not typically recommended for newer players. But the best part about Elden Ring is there's a way to make every single one of these playstyles work and work well. Next up, we have the Confessor. The Confessor is going to be the closest thing to a paladin starting class in this game. You're going to start with a shield that can block 100% of damage, a nice weapon that you can one-hand, and you're going to have a healthy amount of mind, which is going to increase your mana pool, and a good amount of faith for those incantations, some of which you can use to heal yourself. Last but definitely not least, we have the Wretch here. The Wretch is going to start you at level 1, which means you get to choose the points that you put into every single level. The second you hit level 2, you get to invest that point. It wasn't pre-invested by, say, the Confessor, which started you at level 10 and then invested those points for you. This means that as a Wretch, you're going to start with a lowly little club, which is going to make the beginning of the game just a little bit harder, but you'll be able to pick up weapons, especially if you want to start as a Wretch, and then you can run straight to a weapon that's in a chest or in a lootable area somewhere and just grab it without fighting a single enemy, and then this problem is alleviated. You can also pick up runes off the ground that will level you up without really fighting very many enemies. So this is going to be a really popular choice for people that want to min-max their build. The other really important thing about the Wretch is when you respec, it's going to only take you down to where you were when your character was made. And so if you were a Confessor, when you respec, it's going to take you down to your starting stats as a Confessor. Whereas if you start as a Wretch and you respec, it's going to take you down to your starting stats as a Wretch all the way down at level 1, which means you're going to have more points to respec and you're going to have more control over what you respec into. So the Wretch is probably the best choice if you really don't know what you're going to want to do in the end, but it's also going to be the hardest one to start as. For this, we're going to go ahead and do the Wretch. Next, you get to choose your gender, your name, your age, your origin, and the most important choice, your keepsake. So your keepsake here is going to be a starting item that you're allowed to choose before the game starts. And there are definitely winners and losers on this list.
Let's go get you an ice cream cone, champ.
The sprinkles?
Sprinkles are for winners.
The Crimson Amber Medallion is going to give you an item that you can equip that's going to give you a little more HP. The problem with this item is that it's really easy to get in game, so it's not really one you need to waste your keepsake on. Similarly, the Lands Between rune. This is a rune that's just going to give you some XP for free right off the bat. However, this is a game where you can farm infinite XP by killing the same mobs over and over if you want, so there's really no reason to waste your keepsake on this. Golden Seed, on the other hand, is a phenomenal choice because there are a limited number of golden seeds in the game. This is what's going to increase the number of flask charges that you have. Your flask is what you're going to use to refill your health. Your flask is also what you're going to use to refill your mana or your FP so you can cast more spells. So this is going to give you an extra charge. You're fighting a boss, your health gets low, you're going to be able to heal yourself one extra time right from the get-go. This is big. Next, we have the Fanged Imp Ashes. Ashes are summons, so this would allow you to summon the Fanged Imps. It's okay, but you're going to find so many summons and so many better summons than this in the game that unless you just really wanted to have the Fanged Imp summons, there's really no reason to pick this. Cracked Pot is what's going to allow you to craft things like fire bombs, and then you use the fire bomb and you retain the cracked pot. This is what you're going to put the bomb into, and it's a reusable item, but you can find these in the game throughout your playthrough, though, you know, they come a little bit less often and a little bit harder than some of these other items we've talked about. They're still very attainable and very a nuanced item, so it's hard to recommend this over something like the Golden Seed. Next, you have the Stone Sword Key. This is another item that is really useful in the game. However, you find more of them than you need. Stone Sword Keys are going to let you into secret areas where you'll get to a place, but in order to enter it, you need this key. And as I mentioned, there's more of these keys than you need in the game. So as long as you're playing the game quite thoroughly, you're going to always have more of these than you need. So using your keepsake on this item isn't quite necessary, but as far as keepsakes go, it's one of the better options. Next, we have the Bewitching Branch. This is going to let you charm enemies, but it doesn't really work on bosses, which is the only time you're going to need help with something like this. And so this is a hard one to recommend as well because it's such a niche thing and with such a limited use case. Next up, we have Boiled Prawn. This is a consumable that you can use and it's going to boost your physical damage negation. However, this is something that you can craft in game once again. And so using your keepsake on something that you can get just by playing the game is going to be a tough sell for me. Next up, we have Shabriri's Woe. This is a limited consumable that you can use to basically taunt all of the enemies around you. Again, a very unique and niche case scenario. And so unless you have a very specific use case in mind that you would need this for, it's not my favorite starting keepsake. So that's what all of those do. Pick the one that you're excited about. First and foremost, personally, the one that excites me the most when I'm starting a new game is going to be the Golden Seed. You can never have too many heals. This guide is going to try to give you as few spoilers as absolutely possible. Okay, now that you're in the game, let's go ahead and talk about one of the things you'll be staring at the entire time you're playing, and that's going to be your UI. There's a lot of information on here, and some of it's obvious, and some of it's not so obvious. So the first thing is going to be the red bar at the top left there. That is your health bar, as you might have guessed. Below that, you've got your FP bar. This kind of acts like mana would in another game. And then below that, you've got the green bar, which is going to be your stamina bar. Your stamina is going to drain anytime you do things like sprint, swing your weapon, dodge roll, or block while you're in combat. It's automatically going to refill anytime you're not doing those things. To the left of those, you've got a symbol there. That is your Great Rune. You can collect these and then select which one to equip by defeating the game's main bosses, among other things. Think of these like a nice buff that you can equip. Below their stamina there, you've got a bunch of buff icons. That's what the square icons are. If you see a square icon, it's a permanent buff that you have from wearing a piece of gear, wearing a piece of equipment, wearing a talisman, or something like that. And if you see a diamond icon, a diamond-shaped buff rather than square, that means it's a temporary one that you've activated and it's going to fall off after a short duration. Going counterclockwise, it says Bloodhound's Finesse. That's our Ash of War that's attached to this weapon. So this weapon comes with one because it's a unique weapon. So we cannot change that on this weapon, but on most weapons you can, and that's what this is going to look like there. Then below that, we've got our assortment of equipped items, incantations, flasks. So starting at the top there, where you see the red glowing sword, that's our spell slots. So we can rotate through our spell slots in that position. In this game, any character can use spells or incantations. Spells are going to require you to have a staff equipped, and incantations runes are going to require you to have a seal equipped. At first, you'll only be able to have 2 spells or incantations equipped, but then as you play the game, you'll be able to unlock additional memory slots here. We'll dive deep into spells and incantations and memory slots and how all of that works in a section coming up here in this video. Going counterclockwise, we have our offhand item there, which is in this case a seal, and now we've swapped over to our shield. So here we would have the shield out if we're doing combat, and then we swap over to the seal when we want to cast our incantation there. You can swap through all of these things by using your D-pad. Continuing counterclockwise, at the bottom we have our flask of crimson tears. You can see there the number 14. That means we have 14 charges left. We can heal ourselves 14 times, and then below that it says flask of crimson tears plus 10. So you can upgrade your flask, and every time you upgrade it, it gives you more health each time you use the flask. So right now our flask is plus 10, which means it heals us for way more than we started, and it was plus 0 or plus 1. Now if we swap that out, we can see our flask of wondrous physic here. This is a flask that you're going to be able to craft. Think of this kind of like a custom flask where you can find different augments to attach to a potion that is single use, but you can refill it anytime you want by resting it a grace. So you can put buffs on this, you can put heal over times on this, you can put all sorts of interesting things on your flask of wondrous physic after you find those materials to make it. And you can change them out anytime you want by visiting your grace. We'll talk about flasks and wondrous physics in way more detail in a moment here. And then continuing again, you've got your primary weapon. This is your right hand, which in this case is our Bloodhound Fang, which is a really popular weapon. And then on the bottom right side of the screen, you've got our rune count. Your runes are your XP. If you've never played a Dark Souls game, this is what you use to level up your character. Every time you kill a mob, it's going to give you runes, and then you come to a grace to level up your character, like this thing right here. This is a grace. You interact with it, and you can tell the game you want to level up, and then you choose which stat that you're going to want to put your point into. Runes are also the game's primary currency that most merchants will take. And then in the top middle, you've got your compass, which is going to tell you what direction you're going, and it's going to show you nearby points of interest, as well as any markers that you've placed on the map yourself. All right, with the UI out of the way, let's dive into the meat of the game now. So one of the first things that you're going to notice while you're playing the game is these messages on the floor. So if you walk up to these messages and you read them, most of the time, these are left by other players. If it's a message that was left by the developers, as in it's part of the lore, it's supposed to be a message from another NPC, it'll be glowing exceptionally bright. You'll see rays of light shooting up from it, and that's really to call your attention to it because it might be part of a quest line that you're engaged in. It might be a bit of lore, that sort of thing. But generally, they're going to look like this, and that means another player placed it there. And you can read it, and it's going to sometimes give you a message that's a hint, like, hey, there's an item ahead, or it's going to be trolley type of comments, and it'll say jumping required ahead, and if you do try jumping there, you're just going to die. So these messages left by players can be either good advice or bad advice, and as such, you can rate them. So you can see this one has 25 appraisals. I have the ability to rate it as a good or a poor message. If I rate it as a good message, then the player that left it will instantly get a heal equal to one of their flask uses. So what you can do is you can leave good advice for other players. Let's say you find a secret item and you don't see a message pointing it out to people because it glows rather brightly. So like if there was a secret item hidden right around this corner, you could leave a message right here saying item ahead, and then someone would see it and they're like, oh, I almost missed this item, and then they would rate it good. And while you're fighting whatever you're fighting while you're playing, boom, when they rate it, you're going to have a nice heal come in and top your health off for you. So it's a really cool system. You can have 5 messages down at once, and the way you do that is you come into your menu, you go to messages, and you get to choose from template here. That way, you know, you don't get to say anything horrible, but you could just say like, you know, item ahead, like we just said, right? And you put that here, boom, and your character places it. Now that you've placed a message, you can come in here and you can see your messages. You come over to the next tab here, and it's the message you left, how many times it's been rated good, how many times it's been rated poorly. Alternatively, you can go one farther and check out the messages that you've read recently, and you can rate them if you want. That way you don't have to go back and rate it yourself. So we could say this one, applaud message. Yeah, good. We rated that one good. So that's how the message system works. You're going to see those all over. Generally, it's a really good idea to read them. There's a lot of really good tips with those things, and you'll see a lot of items that you would have missed otherwise. Now, these red splatters on the floor, this is going to show you how somebody died. So this is also left by another real player most of the time. Sometimes it'll be part of a quest chain where you have to find out how an NPC died, and so you have to watch their death by interacting with one of these bloodstains. But most of the time, it's another player. So if we interact with this, it's going to show us, hey, this guy ran in here and he died. So we know something dangerous is there. So if you ever are running around and you see like a ton of red stains on the floor, that means there's something dangerous about to happen. And a lot of times it's people jumping where they shouldn't have jumped, or a hidden enemy that ransacks them, that sort of thing. It just kind of gives you a heads up that, oh, there's trouble around. So as you're running around the game, you're going to see white ghosts like that one as well. Those white ghosts are other players playing the game just like you. It's just a little bit of a reminder, hey, you're not alone here. Someone else is going through exactly what you're going through. And you'll also see these right here. These are called graces. These are your checkpoints. This is where you can stop, refill your health, remove any elements or status effects that are on your character. You can fill your FP, and once activated, you can teleport back to it anytime you want. So before you've interacted with it, when you're looking at it, you'll see a lot of glowing swirls around it, kind of indicating like it's trying to help draw your attention. Hey, there's a new grace here for you to interact with. You haven't done this one yet. So we'll interact with it, and it says lost grace discovered. Now we can teleport to this anytime we want to come back to this location. We can rest at it like this to refill our flasks, memorize spells, sort chests, and assortment of other things that we'll talk about when we get on a higher level character, because they're not available on this one yet. We can go into our flask menu and we can say add a charged flask. We can do this because we picked the golden seed at the beginning. So boom, right there. We have 3 flask charges. We use the golden seed. Now we have 4 flask charges down there in the bottom left, which is going to be incredibly helpful against the bosses and the enemies that we're fighting. In here, you can also allocate flask charges. So you can come here and you can say how many you want to be for your FP and how many you want to be for your HP. And you can pick any ratio you want. If you're playing an incantation or a spellcaster, you probably won't need much more than 2 health potions, and then you're going to want a lot of FP potions, so that you can continue to cast all of those spells and those incantations. You'll also be able to increase the amount that you replenish your flasks by collecting items that we'll talk about here in a second. All right, now for combat. So it tells you how to lock onto enemies. So you can lock onto them. You can press R3 if you are on console, and your scroll wheel, you press it down and it locks onto enemies. That's the default keybind. And from there, you'll always be locked onto the enemy. This really helps against 95% of enemies in the game. This is going to make it a lot easier to fight them. However, some enemies are really big, and you'll notice that your camera's going all over the place, and you're trying to just hit their ankles, but the camera's locked onto their torso, and so it's really disorienting. In that case, you turn it off and you fight without being locked on. So we'll go ahead and turn it on, and then boom, we're gonna hit this guy with a couple of basic attacks there, light attacks. This guy here, we can use a heavy attack right there with a nice R2. Now a massive part of this game is going to be dodge rolling and dodging. So when an enemy goes to attack you, you can just dodge roll it. And this is going to be what you're going to want to do most times to evade damage. And the lighter your equip load, the farther your dodge roll is going to go. So now that we've taken some damage, we can go ahead and use our flask to heal back to full. Easy peasy. You can jump in this game, which is actually fairly new for a Souls game. You get to, we just took an arrow to our head and our chest there. So let's go deal with that. So there's an archer up there. This is something you're going to run into from time to time. There will be archers up and out of reach trying to shoot you while you are doing other things. Now, these items, when you're running around and you see something that stands out, it's most likely going to be a crafting material that you can gather. So we'll go ahead and gather this. You'll be able to use these to make buffs and cures and things like that can help you throughout the game. And we'll talk about how to find all the recipes for those in a moment. Here's a big guy now. Go ahead and try to two-hand our weapon, and we're going to hit him until we break his poise, and that's going to allow him to pull his shield down, and then we can finish him off. Now, if you press L2, it's going to use your Ash of War. This one is Barbaric Roar on this weapon. So we use that, and now you can see it's given us a nice buff up there under our stamina bar, increasing our damage. And that is going to use some of your FP. You'll notice some of our FP has been used. This game does have crouching, so you can crouch to sneak up to enemies. And crouch is more effective when you are behind bushes and things like that. You sneak up to someone and you can get a critical hit on them like that one right there. Enemies have a poise meter. It's an invisible poise meter underneath them that basically you can stagger them by breaking their poise meter. And when you hit them, it removes some of that poise meter, and then that poise meter will start slowly refilling unless you hit them again. And so different attacks will have different effects on their poise, and You can see he spent all of his time recoiling from our attacks because he has a really low poise, and so we were able to just keep him perma-stunned. When you see a statue like this indicates a place where you will res if you die. So you won't have to go all the way back from that grace we touched earlier. You would start right here, and you'll usually find these right before boss encounters or right before the game knows it's about to do you dirty. And you'll see one of these and you'll be like, oh man, what's coming up? So in this case, it's a little mini boss fight that you start in the tutorial of the game here. Don't worry, we've not spoiled anything. We're still in the game's tutorial. So we'll go ahead and die to show you what that looks like. Here you got two options. You can choose to revive from the stake of MARIKA, or you can go to your last site of grace that you visited. So we would want to choose the stake of MARIKA, and that's going to spawn us right outside of the boss fight that we died at. Now there's one problem. You'll notice that in the bottom right corner there, we have no runes. So every time you die, you drop those runes that you use to level up. If you don't use them at the grace you visit before you die, they get dropped on the floor. If you die before picking them up, they're gone forever. So right now they're in this room where I died. You can see them on the compass there. It's pointing me to them. And if we open the map, you can see them on the map as well. So if you're ever not sure where you died, you can find out. It leaves that symbol there saying, hey, your runes are right here. You better collect them before you die again. So we're going to run in and we'll pick up our souls, or our runes as this game calls them. And then we'll fight this boss, baiting those attacks. Oh, not like that. There we go. Take him down. And that enemy has been felled. And we got a nice juicy 400 runes from him. Go ahead and heal on our way. Now you'll see little things like this. These are little collectibles right here. This glowing item, and you can pillage the remains. Whenever you see an item, a piece of gear, or something like that out in the wilderness, it'll usually have a symbol that looks like this. Sometimes it'll be more colorful than this one. Instead of being white, it'll be yellow or yellow and blue. And that indicates that it's an even more valuable item. So I'll pick it up. And in this case, it's just an emote. And talk about how you collect those in a moment. Here you've got a little Erdtree. Now, typically when you see these out in the wild, you're going to want to run to them and pick up the golden seed that's sitting beneath it. This one here does not have a golden seed sitting beneath it, but every time you run into one of these in the future, they will. So you'll want to grab that golden seed sitting beneath one of these little trees, because as you might remember, those golden seeds are what increase the flask. Speaking of, here's a slightly more colorful one, right? Indicating this is perhaps even better than the last one that we found. Oh, and it's a finger severer. So we'll talk more about that and the tarnished furled finger in a little bit here when we start talking about multiplayer content in this game. So here we have another side of grace. So you'd want to interact with this. Now we've unlocked it. We can teleport here anytime we want to. And this right here is what it looks like when you need to use a stone sword key. You'll see something that looks exactly like this statue right here. And you'll see a gray ethereal wall that you cannot pass through, right? And so what you would do is you'd put the stone sword key here, use your stone sword key, and you'd say yes, and it would open this for you. Now, we did not choose the stone sword key at the beginning, so we don't have it yet. If you do take the stone sword key, you can come in here right away, but be warned, this is going to be quite a challenge when you're super low level. That's not the easiest place to navigate in the world, those catacombs. Now, here you have a lift in Elden Ring. Now, one thing to be aware of with lifts is one very common little puzzle tactic that FromSoft uses is sometimes lifts will kind of have a double layer to them. So there will be the lift that you see when you walk up to it, and then there will be a lift underneath it. So you'll have to raise it up and then jump off and then go underneath the lifts, right? They do all kinds of little puzzles where there's something hidden beneath the lift, or there's another lift below it and you have to step on that and then go down to go to a like subterranean level instead of, you know, the obvious second or third story that you thought you were going to go up to. Right when you come outside at the beginning of the game, you'll see that guy right there, the Sentinal. You can fight him at the beginning and it is possible to beat him. However, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a very difficult fight at low level, as opposed to later you can come back and absolutely curb stomp him if you want to. He's basically there to teach you the lesson that in Elden Ring, your path to victory is not a straight one. So you'll run into something that you can't beat. And so the solution will be to explore, level up, kill things, get runes, level up again, get a weapon, and then come back and then kill the thing that stopped you the first time you tried to fight it. So that's what he kind of serves to teach you here. He's meant to be ridiculously hard for this point in the game, but if you go explore this area, level up a few times, get a better weapon, maybe even upgrade that weapon, it'll be no problem at all. So we're going to grab the grace here. So this grace has something important to be aware of. See the trail shooting off of this grace? A lot of graces in this game will have a trail like this, and this is kind of leading you towards the next major milestone in progressing in this game. It's saying, hey, The next important thing, the next big thing is this direction. That's not always the direction you should go though, because it'll skip a lot of optional content if you just follow that every time, which can lead to you being incredibly underleveled and underprepared for the fight ahead. So a lot of times, even though it says to go that way, you're going to want to instead explore. But at this point in the game, we definitely want to listen to it. There will be NPCs like this one scattered throughout the game. And typically what you'll want to do is talk to them until they start repeating themselves. That tells you that you've exhausted all of their dialogue. And quests in Elden Ring are not like quests in other games. They don't tell you where to go next. I mean, they do, but you have to pay attention to the dialogue or the item that they give you. And you'll have to read the item that they give you in the description and then do what it's kind of telling you to do. Or you can do what most people do and look it up on a wiki somewhere. Because the quests in this game are incredibly easy to miss. And if you're not making it a point to complete them, you're going to miss them. Or you're going to go too far into the game and miss the opportunity to complete them. They do typically have good rewards. They'll have things like dragon somber stones and things like this that allow you to plus 10 your weapons. You can get a number of those without doing the quests. So it's not like the quests are mandatory. They're incredibly optional in this game. So if you miss the quest because you're doing a natural playthrough where you're not following guides and you just happen to not do them, which you won't do most of them if you're playing it that way, because this game doesn't hold your hand. So like if you don't know what you're supposed to do, it's very easy to just not do it. That's like a quick overview of the questing in this game. There's only a couple of quests that are actually going to put a marker on your map. The rest of the time, you're going to have to listen to what they tell you and read the item that they give you. But the reward for doing it can be a very nice reward, or you can unlock an entirely different ending for the game. There's multiple endings to Elden Ring, and the ending that you get is largely based on which quests you decide to do while you play. Okay, another thing you're going to see, which is really important here, is a church right there. Now, whenever you see a church in this game, you want to go to it because this is how you're going to upgrade your flask. Generally speaking, you're going to come to these and there will be an upgrade material so that you can make your flask better. It's what's going to improve it. This first church is an exception to that rule. The golden seeds that you find underneath the glowing gold trees, the little ones, will let you add more charges to it. The churches are generally going to give you items that increase the amount of health you get back when you use it. This church here is a little opening church. You've got a NPC that you can talk to here, and you can buy things from these NPCs. And there's something important to know about these NPCs. We can ask him to talk about himself and again, go through all of his dialogue, which I always recommend doing. If there's an option here that looks like it has to do with him talking to you, pick it and exhaust that dialogue, because this is how you're going to do the quests and find the quests and what you should do next. So he's recommending that we buy a couple of things with the runes that we have. So we have collected a few runes and the game isn't letting us level up yet. And he recommends we make a crafting kit. This is going to let us do some crafting, which we'll absolutely grab. And then he sells a few other things that are really important to be aware of. So there's a bunch of items like the telescope, which you can basically use to zoom in on locations far away. Completely optional. There's no situation in which you need this item. Cracked pods. These are what's going to allow you to make certain items that you can throw at enemies and things like that. And these are reusable. So if you throw it, you get the empty pot back. And then there's the cookbooks. Okay, so the cookbooks are actually really important when it comes to being able to craft all of the things in the game. Now, you can 100% play through this entire game without crafting a single thing. If it sounds tedious or if it sounds like a lot of work and you don't want to bother with it, you can avoid it. But it does add a lot of quality of life. Like, let's say you get poisoned, you'll be able to craft and use an item that removes the poison. So it's very handy to have these. So I do recommend picking up any cookbooks that you find along the way. They're a pretty trivial amount of runes. I mean, this is a lot of runes right now for this point in the game, but in the grand scheme of things, the runes that it's going to cost you to own them all, it's next to nothing. He's also selling some arrows and bolts and, a torch. The torch can be useful, but I like the lantern better because the lantern you can throw on your hip and you don't have to hold it in your hand. So you can use a two-hand weapon or you can use a one hand and a shield. Whereas if you're carrying a torch in one of your hands, now you can only use a one-hand weapon in the other hand, and it kind of limits your loadout. But the torch gives you way more light. It'll light up a room really well, whereas the lantern is a much more localized light source. Selling some armor here, and then he's selling these notes. Now, all of these merchants will sell things like this. They all have their own unique inventory of things that they sell, and the notes at the bottom, if you're doing a completely spoiler-free playthrough, these notes can be nice to have. It's a note of wondrous physics, so it's going to tell you about wondrous physics, which you're going to want to know about, and maybe where you might upgrade and stuff like that. So if we look at it and we switch the display in the middle, using X down there, it'll give us a better description of what this item is, which is something you're going to want to take advantage of, especially with cookbooks. So if you use that on this, you use X to switch your display, it tells you exactly what this cookbook is going to give you. Bone arrow fletched, bone bolt, and this one's going to give us the ability to make glowstones, invigorating cured meat, invigorating white cured meat, and this one's going to let us make holy water pot and roped holy water pot. So that information is not immediately divulged to you when you select these items. You actually have to change the menu by pressing X, and then you can see it. And a lot of people play all the way through this game without realizing the cookbooks actually tell you what they give you before you buy them. So now you know, okay? As these notes, however, say, you have to buy them before you know what they say. So if we buy this one for the Wondrous Physick, let's go ahead and do that. We bought it. We'll go ahead and purchase the Waypoint Ruins as well. So if we look at the notes that we bought, it tells us a flask of Wondrous Physick still remains in the 3rd Church of MARIKA, north of Mistwood. So it's telling us exactly where to go to get the flask of Wondrous Physick. Good information, especially if you're doing a blind playthrough. And then this one says, someone lurks among the Waypoint Ruins in the roads through Limgrave. Now there's a smithing stone here in this 1st church that you can use to level up your weapons. So we can go strength and armament. And it says that we're going to need 2 smithing stones. So there's a few ways to get smithing stones in this game to upgrade your weapons. One is you'll just find it like this one was sitting here. You'll find it as an item just sitting that you walk by and grab. Another is that you'll kill an enemy and it'll drop. Another still is you'll run into a cave, a mine, or a tunnel, and when you find one of these, there's a lot of weapon upgrade materials in mines. That's a great place. Now you'll notice that if you interact with the Grace at this point in the game, it's not going to let you level up. It's not going to give you that option yet, and that's because it wants you to follow these Graces for a moment to where it's telling you to go. And then after you've done that a couple of times, get the prompt to talk to an NPC, and she's going to give us the ability to level up. She's also going to give us our mount. So we definitely want to activate that as soon as possible because there's not a big reason to collect a ton of runes until we have the ability to spend them. For that, we're liable to lose them every time we die. So here is the next marker that it was pointing us towards. We'll interact with that, and now we're going to sit down and we get a little cutscene. And this is going to introduce us to Melina, who's going to help us level up as we progress through the game. She's going to ask you if you want to accept her help or refuse it. We're going to go ahead and accept it. And she's going to give us a spectral steed whistle. This is really important. This is what's going to allow us to summon our mounts named Torrent anytime we want to. And your mount is huge in this game. You are so powerful when you're riding your mount. So that is a huge give. Plus the world is massive. Now we have the ability to level up. And we come to her and we can see that we are level 1 and we have 22 runes and we need 673 before we're going to be able to level up our character. So we need to go out and collect some runes. Now, this is important. The game's going to tell you from pouch in the main menu, you can equip up to 6 items to your pouches. 4 of those items can be used without opening the main menu. So depending on the binds you're using, it might look something like this. You hold down Y and press the direction you want to go. So if we hold down Y, the bottom left there turns into our pouch. Now we can use the D-pad to pick the item we want to use. Now you'll notice there's an item right there that says lose all your runes and return to the site of grace. You have that on you, but you're going to say no. And instead you're going to come in here and you're going to unequip that until you want to use it. There's no reason for that to be bound to your pouch. You don't need that there. So we're going to remove that. And instead, we're going to put something else there. We're going to put the spectral steed whistle. Now that that's equipped there, it's got the little pouch symbol. When we hold down Y, you see the steed whistle. We press up. Now there's our mount. So the reason that the mount is big in this game is 1, it's fast. So it's going to make you cover distance way faster. You'll be able to run by enemies that you don't want to engage with. Maybe you've already killed them before, or maybe you just don't feel like killing them yet. It's also going to let you attack enemies. You can hit them while you're on the mount, and you do fantastic damage while swinging your weapon from your mount, by the way. So when you can, it's generally a good idea to fight things while on your mount. The mounted combat in this game is better than just about any other game I've had mounted combat on. And remember, you can lock onto enemies so that you don't miss them when you're riding by. I mean, it's a lot harder to miss them anyway. And one of the best things about the mount is you've got a double jump. that's really going to expand where you can and cannot explore in this game when you take advantage of that double jump. And you can use it also coming down from places, although be careful, you cannot jump down from like something really high and then use a double jump at the end. You'll still die. So if you jump from a distance that would have killed you without, using your double jump, you're going to die even if you do try to use it to slow your fall. The game doesn't let you do that. A death fall is a death fall no matter what. Now, the one exception to that is when you see these currents like this one here on the floor down there, that wind current coming up, you can jump down onto those without taking damage, and you can jump from those to leap great heights. So we'll just give you an example of that here. Boom. Now we fell down. That would have definitely been a deadly fall had we not had this current here, and we can use it likewise to go up. And sometimes you can use it to get to secret places and stuff like that. So for instance, in this case, we could have used it to go up on top of that structure there. And perhaps there's an item up there that you should look for. Just saying. To get off of the mount, you can press the same thing that you press to get on it, and your character will jump on, jump off. You can do it while running, you can do it while sprinting, and do a lunging attack, dismounting and attacking at the same time. So that is your mount. His name's Torrent. He's a great mount. And you'll see this is pointing you that direction there. Okay, so if we were to follow that, we would go that direction. Now, the map's not telling us a whole lot right now, is it? There's no color to it. It's very barren. We only see the things we found. So we see Stormgate here. We see Gatefront Ruins. But what we also see that's really important is this object right here. This thing, kind of barely glowing. We see like a little pillar. That is where you go to collect the map fragment for this area. And it'll reveal this whole area, so that we can see important locations on the map. We can see, terrain. We can see all sorts of good stuff. So we're going to go grab that real quick. And what I would do is when you can see it, go ahead and place a marker down, right? See right here, it tells you how to put a marker down. Place a marker there. And then we know, oh, it's like right there. So we're going to run to that marker that we just placed. And if we run through the marker, it's going to disappear. Now that marker is going to go away because we went through it, right? So here it is. And we're going to want to grab it right now. I'm going to try to do this without aggroing everybody. And there it is. You'll see the pillar. It looks like this every single time. It always looks like that. It's got the glowing text. It's got the item in front of it that you pick up. That's the map fragment. And then now, if we open the map, it says a new map has been found, Limgrave West. And now we can zoom out and look at that. We can see roads. We can see places on the map. So when you first open this map, it feels a little bit like information overload. You think that you don't see anything. But in fact, everything that you need to know is visible right now. You can see just about every location. You just don't know it yet. So whenever you see a circle like this on the ground that kind of sets itself apart from the terrain, that's going to be an ever goal. That's a fight. You go there and you activate a fight with an enemy, and you'll get a nice reward if you manage to defeat them. When you see a glowing circle like this, that's a cave or a mine that you can go into. And remember, I said that's a great place to get upgrade materials for your weapon. This is a telescope that you can go and interact with, and it just lets you take a look at the area from a bird's eye point of view. These are totally optional to interact with. They're not like super important that you head to these locations, but you can go and do that if that sounds fun. Get a bird's eye view. And if we look around, you can see ruins here. See these? It looks like the ruins of some kind of structure. You would go there and there would be ruins there. Here's the graveyard that we were in earlier. That's where we came out of. Here's another ever goal. You can see these wall outlines right here, and those are ruins. At first, it might look like nothing. And then as you get used to what the art style is on this map and you start noticing, it'll become very evident to you. Now, some things aren't on this map. Like there's a cave in the wall here somewhere, and there's a couple of caves actually along this wall you can't see right now, and the only way to find those would be to run along this wall and run into them naturally by exploring, and there's a lot of that in this game. So this game is a game that rewards you for exploring. Anytime you're like, I wonder what's over there, there's almost certainly something over there. If you're wondering, I wonder what's up there, there's almost certainly something up there, right? It is a game that rewards exploring, and it wants you to do that. Right now, it's telling me to go up this way, right? It's pointing us in the direction of the first main story fight, like the first main boss fight. That's what these things are pointing us to. So what I would recommend when you get to this point is not go that way. Now it's time to start exploring everything in this area here. And this game is not level locked. It doesn't have level scaling, right? The mobs in an area are always a certain level. And so if you go there when you're too low, they'll be really hard. And if you go there later, they might be really easy because now you're over leveled for that area. Since you can visit any zone in any order, that's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes you'll get to an area early and it'll be hard but rewarding, and sometimes you'll get there late and it'll be nice and easy, and you'll really feel how strong you've gotten. Another thing you can see on the map here is there's an NPC here. And so generally anytime you see an NPC on the map, it's a good idea to go talk to them and exhaust their dialogue. Just like this NPC here. That's the one we were talking to there. And this is the NPC we were talking to right when we walked outside. And just be aware of the fact that you can show the underground map as well. Once you walk up near a location, a symbol will appear on your map. That doesn't mean that you've completed it. It just means that you walked close enough for your map to say, oh, you found this location. So make sure while you're there, you either complete it or you leave a symbol on it saying, I found it, but I didn't do it yet. So you know, right? So if you go to a ruin, but you don't go in the cellar, leave a note to yourself saying, I didn't do the cellar. But better yet, you know, it only takes a second to find the cellar usually, and then you just run on in, grab it while you're there. Same thing for your ever goals. When you see this symbol, you want to do that. You want to fight the guy. If you can't kill him, if it's too tough of a fight, then go ahead and leave the marker there, you know, saying there's a boss there. Then you've got the churches. You want to go to the church. Anytime you see a church, you want to go there. You can see them on the map. You will get good at spotting them on the map before you find them, right? Like you can see a little rectangular outline on the map and you're like, oh, that's definitely going to be a church there. That's the shape they always put on the map for a church. And then sure enough, you run up to it. And that's where you're going to get your flask upgrades so that your flasks heal for more and replenish more FP, which are super important. When you see a little cave symbol like this, that's going to be a little dungeon that you go down in and explore. And oftentimes you'll get upgrade materials and weapons and all kinds of good stuff. And then there's a boss fight at the end. So always do that. They're fun puzzles, good exploration. When you see the little shack like this, it's usually going to be an NPC there or some objective of some sort. This NPC right here, the isolated merchant shack, this is where you're going to come pick up your lantern, by the way. Just a heads up. So you start right here, the first step, that's where you come out of the building. You're going to run down here, run in here, run across this, and boom, you're going to pick up your lantern. Highly recommend running to that church on your way here. So you grab that flask upgrade and get your lantern. And that way, when you're exploring the game, now you have a light source permanently for the rest of the game. Really big. The minor Erdtree, when you see a big tree with a little golden tree, that's the minor Erdtree. That's where you can go and get your wondrous flask upgrades so that you can craft more variations of your wondrous flask. But the thing about these is there's often a boss that you have to kill in order to get it. So you're going to have to work for that reward, and it can be a tough fight. It's usually 9 times out of 10, it's the same boss. So once you get good at fighting one of them, you're going to be good at fighting all of them because they're all very similar, though not identical. Another symbol that you want to be aware of is this, the rises. When you see a rise, that's how you get memory slots so that you can memorize more spells at any given moment. So when you start the game, you'll be able to have 2 spells equipped. And if you want to use a 3rd spell, you have to equip one of the 2 that you first equipped, right? Because you only have 2 at a time. However, every time you go to one of these rises and solve the puzzles, climb your way to the top, you'll unlock a memory stone that you'll be able to use to get extra memory slots like this. And then you can put all your spells in there, memorize them. Divine towers are where you can go to unlock your great runes. After you kill a boss, you'll go to your divine tower and then unlock the ability to use it. So tunnels are where you're often going to go, and you're going to get weapon upgrade materials if you go into a tunnel. And catacombs are where you're going to go to find upgrades for your summons. So those are going to be the important destinations to know on the map and what to expect from each of those and why you should go to every one of those whenever you find them. The game's very consistent about the rewards you get from each type of location. All right, as you're running through the game, you're going to be picking up a lot of stuff off of the ground. A lot of times it's just going to be these crafting materials here. And so they're going to go in there and you're not going to think much of them. And you might be wondering to yourself, which ones are important? Which ones should I be really aware of when I pick them up? So let's talk about that really quick. Anytime you pick an ash up, an ash or an ash of war, right? The ash of war, we talked about a little bit already. That's something you can attach to your weapon to give it an ability or to change its scaling. But then there's ashes, not to be confused with ashes of war. The ashes are the summons. These are things that you can slot in your pouch and then you can summon them to help you in battle. And these are the things that really make the game have a sliding scale of difficulty. If you want this game to be easy, then you use a really good ash. And some of these ashes can nearly solo the bosses for you. If you want the game to be as hard as possible or as close in difficulty as possible to, say, Dark Souls 3 or Sekiro, then you don't use an ash at all. And there's no right or wrong way to play the game. It's totally up to you. Whatever's fun, go with that. I've done playthroughs where I don't use any ashes, and I've done playthroughs where I use the very best one, the Mimic tier, and you know, it solos bosses for me. It nearly soloed Millennia for me, and that's the hardest boss in the game, right? So that's how powerful these things are, especially once you level them up. So ashes, you can level up to +10. Your weapons, you can level up as well. So let's talk about that. So the important materials that you'll find in this game are the things that level up items that you're using. Now there's two materials that you're going to be looking for to upgrade your flask. The golden seeds are going to increase the number of charges your flask has before it runs empty. So at first you'll have to consume one golden seed to get one additional charge to your flask. And then at the end of the game, when you're getting up to plus 10, 11, 12, it's going to be asking for 5 golden seeds for a single upgrade. So you're always going to be looking for these on your entire playthrough. And the other way to upgrade your flask is not to improve the quantity, but the quality of the heals that the flask gives you. And to do that, you're going to find sacred tears, which are usually found at churches. So golden seeds and sacred tears are flask upgrades. You're always going to want those. Then there are smithing stones, these down here. Smithing stones are going to increase the level of your weapon. Regular weapons can use these smithing stones to go all the way to plus 25, as you can see here. So this one right here, the basic smithing stone ones will take your weapon to plus 3, and then this one right here, it says will upgrade your weapon all the way up to plus 15, right? You're going to use a few of these each time all the way until you get to the very last one, which is only going to require one of these, and it's going to take your weapon to plus 25 there. Alternatively, you might be using one of the unique weapons in the game. Very common, very powerful weapons, lots of fun to use, and so then you would need somber smithing stones. So if you go to upgrade your weapon, but you can't, it's either because you don't have the runes necessary to upgrade it, or you don't have the correct upgrade material. So you might be using a weapon that requires smithing stones, but you only have somber smithing stones, or vice versa. Somber weapons only go up to plus 10. That's not to say that they're weaker, it's just that they get more power per level, and these are harder to come by than the regular smithing stones are because these are unique weapons. And the last section to be aware of here is the glowewort. So you've got two types of glowewort, just like you've got two types of smithing stones. There are the grave gloveworts, which is kind of your basic ashes or your basic summons. And then you've got the ghost gloveworts. These are your more powerful summons. One way to play the game, if you're really worried about spending your glowewort on the wrong ash, on the wrong summon, you can use your grave gloveworts to upgrade anyone that you find and you kind of like. You can max it out, get it up to plus 10, and then when you find a really powerful rare summon, then you can go ahead and use your ghost gloveworts to take that one to plus 10. And don't worry, there are enough gloveworts to make multiple ashes to plus 10 of both types. As you can see, I have 3 of the plus 10 glowewort. This is the rarest one in the game. I have 3 of those. So I could get 3 more of my summons to plus 10, and then I can get 3 more of my rare summons to plus 10 with my great ghost gloveworts. So, don't feel like if you upgrade one, you're locking yourself out of upgrading a better one later on. It doesn't work that way. Same thing with the weapons. You can see here, I have 3 more of the ancient dragon smithing stones to take 3 more weapons to max. And then I've got 4 more of the sombers, so I can take 4 more of the somber weapons to max. So you can upgrade more than one. Don't be afraid to take a weapon to plus 10. You can always do it again later if you find another one that you want to use more. To upgrade your weapons, you just come to your blacksmith, go strengthen armament, and tell him the armament that you want to plus up. And you could say strengthen dagger to plus 1. Okay. And you can take it to plus 2 and then plus 3 and then plus 4 and all the way. And then to strengthen your ashes or your summons, you come to MARIKA, spirit tuning, and you pick the one you want to upgrade. The ashes are the ones that require the grave gloveworts, and then the special ashes, as it calls them, require the ghost gloveworts. These leveling up your summon is super powerful. So if you're ever struggling on a boss, come here, pick a good summon, max it out, and then go back to the boss, summon your summon as soon as you step into the arena and have it help you with the boss fight. I guarantee you'll take it down. All right, next let's talk about how to actually use your summon. So what you're going to do first is you're going to find ashes while you're playing the game. If we come into our inventory here, we can easily see all of the ashes that we found. We've got all of them right here. And you're going to slot them on your pouch here. That's probably the most convenient way to handle this. And so down here, you see what it says. It says Y to switch. So you would just switch and you can choose any one of your ashes that you want. Scroll down to your ashes, choose the one that you want, and it'll be there on the wheel. And then when you see this symbol on screen, you'll be able to summon your ash. If that symbol is not on screen, then it's not a situation in which you're allowed to summon. You'll find ashes from every possible place that you can imagine, whether it's in a chest, on the floor, on a corpse, on a boss. They're everywhere. So you'll find them throughout the game. Just loot everything, collect everything, kill everything, and you'll find plenty of ashes. And like I mentioned, these will be your sliding difficulty scale for this game. The better the ash, the easier the game, until, you know, you've got the Mimic tier, which can basically solo bosses for you because it's an exact replica of you, talismans and all, but somehow has way more survivability than you do. All right, now let's quickly talk about the Flask of Wondrous Physics. So you're going to come here to the Church of MARIKA, the third Church of MARIKA here, and you'll find the essential ingredients to get this thing started. And then what you're going to do is come to a grace and you'll click Mix Wondrous Physick. And from here, you'll be able to choose from a combination of any 2 tiers that you found. So you can click this first spot and then you can choose this one, and you can click the second one and you choose this one. And now you've got one that temporarily boosts all damage negation and causes an explosion, right? And then you equip that. And now if we switch from my regular flask that heals me over to my other flask, I can use this. It has 1 charge. And now it's going to give me damage negation and and an explosion, right? And so as you play through the game, you're going to find those tiers all over the place, oftentimes at these minor Erdtrees, like we mentioned, and you'll collect them, and then you can mix and match any 2 of them that you want simply by going here and choosing the 2 that you would like to have selected. While you're playing, you'll see these beetles like this one right here. Red ones like this are going to give you flasks, your health flasks. Blue ones are usually going to give you your mana flasks back. And then the white ones sometimes give you Ashes of War, and sometimes they give you Somber Smithing Stones. So there's a lot of different things that you can get from those. But generally, when you see one, it's a good idea to kill it at least once and make sure you get the loot that it drops, just in case it's a really nice Somber Smithing Stone or something that you really want. All right, let's quickly talk about how to respec in this game. So what you'll be able to do is come here. You'll go to the Raya Lucaria Grand Library waypoint here. This is in the Academy of Raya Lucaria. So you'll go here to this waypoint and you'll talk to the NPC here. You'll have the option to rebirth and completely reset your stats, and you'll also have the option to change your appearance if you really hate the way you made your character at the very beginning of the game. So nothing there is permanent. You're all good to respec if you want to. You will need a currency, however, and the item you're going to need for respecking is called the larval tier. So if you go to your key items here, scroll down, and you'll have the larval tier, material needed by Renala to grant rebirth. As you can see, I have 11 of these on this character so far, which means you shouldn't be afraid to respec if it's something that you want to do. You will have way more than enough opportunities to do so. You're going to have at least 11 of these if you're semi-thorough when you go through the game. All right, now let's talk about remembrances, because these are kind of interesting. So if you've played Dark Souls games before, you're familiar with this process. When you kill the big bads, the big enemies, the big bosses, you're occasionally going to get their remembrances. And what you're going to be able to do with these is you're going to be able to come to the little witch lady in your base, in your round table. If you haven't found her yet, don't worry, it's not time. But when you find her, when she appears in your base, you'll be able to go and receive the power from remembrances, which is going to be the spells and the weapons. So as you can see here, we can see if I hover over these down here, it tells me that I would need 3,000 runes and I could go ahead and purchase one of these things. Alternatively, I could receive the equipment and I could grab the gear that they have. But what happens if you want a weapon and an armor? Well, then you'd have to duplicate one of those remembrances. So you'd come to one of these mausoleums. They look like this, and they'll be walking around. They've got 4 legs and the legs have barnacles on them. You walk around, you swat the barnacles off of the legs, and then it comes crashing to the ground, and you can come inside like this, you can interact with it, and then you can choose the remembrance that you want to duplicate, thereby allowing you to grab one of its powers and one of its armors. One big thing to be aware of is that the mausoleums with bells will duplicate any boss's remembrance, whereas the monuments without bells will only duplicate the remembrance of a non-shard bearer boss. You can only use each mausoleum one time per playthrough, but you can use a remembrance and still go to a mausoleum to duplicate it after you've used it. So don't be afraid to use them before you duplicate them. All right, now let's talk about the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC and how to access it, just in case you don't know, because it is a little bit of a puzzle. I will be telling you how to get to a secret zone, so this is, of course, a minor spoiler. So if that bothers you, be sure to skip to the next section. 3, 2, 1, here we go. So what you're going to need to do is defeat the boss at the end of Mogwin's Palace. If you've already done this, then all you have to do is teleport to the Cocoon of the Empyrean Grace. Once there, interact with Miquella's cocoon, and boom, you're in the DLC zone. If you haven't unlocked Mogwyn's Palace yet, there's 2 ways to get there. The first involves a quest with an NPC that you meet right as soon as you start the game. You walk outside, and standing there in front of you is White Masquerade. Talk to him, don't hurt him, don't kill him, and you'll be able to continue his quest line once you get up to Rose Church in Liurnia. Here you'll see him standing in front of the church, do his quest, which is going to involve invading a few other people, and then he's going to give you an item that you can use to teleport yourself to Mog's Palace. All you have to do is go into your inventory, scroll down to the item, and use it. And that's going to teleport you to Mogwyn's Palace. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that quest, or you can't do that quest, perhaps you attacked him, perhaps you killed him, what you can do is, once you've unlocked the consecrated snowfield, is head to this spot right here. And here you'll find a teleporter. You interact with this and it's going to teleport you to Mogwyn Palace. Once you get there, fight your way through it, defeat the boss at the end, and you'll find yourself standing in front of Miquella's cocoon and you're ready to interact with it and enter the DLC. All right, now let's quickly go over the new progression system that's being added with the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. So the way this works is actually pretty brilliant. It's going to allow you to have power progression in the DLC, which is something that previous FromSoft DLCs really struggled with. Your build would pretty much always be maxed out by the time you went into the DLC. You'd have your plus 10 weapon already, right? Or your plus 25 weapon, and there'd be no way to upgrade it beyond that. And so there was not much power progression once you got into the DLC. This time, however, they figured out a solution for that. The way that this works is there's going to be these SKADUTREE fragments or SHADOWTREE fragments that are going to be found throughout the game. They'll be tucked under little golden crosses like this one here. You find one and then you can go ahead and use it to upgrade your SKADUTREE blessing. So you can take it to +1 when you find 1 fragment, and then to go to SKADUTREE blessing 2, you're going to need 2 fragments, and so on. So the higher level blessing you get, the more fragments it's going to require, just like your flask. This blessing is going to be a permanent buff anytime you're in the DLC zone. If you look at your stats, they'll be golden, indicating that you have this buff on them. When you leave this zone, you're going to lose the buff. So this buff isn't going to make you OP outside of the DLC. It's only going to be active while you're in the DLC. Each level of this buff is going to give you increased offensive and defensive power. So your damage is going to go up and the damage you take when you're hit is going to go down for each level of this buff that you find. But that's not the only buff that you're going to be able to find in the DLC. So there's also a similar buff for your ashes. So you're going to be able to find these revered spirit ashes to use to buff both your spirit ashes and your mount torrent. So whether or not you're using summons, you're going to want to collect the revered spirit buff because this is going to also decrease the amount of damage that torrent takes. So that's going to help a lot with stopping you from getting knocked off your mount constantly in the new DLC zone. Another thing is ruins. So this ruin here, anytime there's a ruin, there's a cellar. Okay. That's the not obvious part about ruins is anytime there's a ruin, there's a cellar. So if we go and we look, we'll be able to find a cellar. And this is what a cellar will look like when you find it, just like this. Though sometimes the entrance will be hidden by a fake wall or a fake floor, and it'll be inside the ruin. So then what you'll do is you'll run down into the cellar, you'll open some kind of door, and sometimes there's a fight behind this door, sometimes there's just a chest. It really depends on the ruin and the cellar that you're entering. In this case, we come down here and we get a whetstone knife. And this one gave us the Ash of War Stomp. So the whetstone knife is going to allow us to add new battle arts and affinities to our weapons, right? We've now unlocked the ability to do that. And so we come in here and we go to our Ashes of War and we've got Storm Stomp. So let's talk about Ashes of War really quick because this is absolutely something you're going to do. We're going to go ahead and teleport back to this Grace because this is where you're going to be able to do things like apply Ashes of War and upgrade your character. So if we come here to the Grace, we see Ashes of War. Now we can click on this item and then we can choose one of our Ashes of War that we have. So we just unlock this one. Let's go ahead and choose the Ashes of War we want. And Ashes of War can change the scaling of a weapon, but we're going to dive into that in 1 second. First, let's talk about the Ash of War. We're going to go with standard scaling. We'll leave it as it is, scaling with strength here on this character for now. Now, our Ash of War for this weapon is no longer that buff that we used earlier. Now, it's going to be a stomp. So we'll come up to this guy, use it, boom, and it stuns him. And we can go do it again, knocks his shield down, and look at that. So that stomp right there just made those guys who are normally really a pain to get their shield out of your way. You'll have to dodge around it or, wait for him to attack and then counter attack, or you could just slam your foot on the ground and it staggers him and it lets you beat on him. So very nice to take advantage of those Ashes of War. When you find them, try them out, see how you like them. All right, now let's talk about the scaling of a weapon, because this is tied into the Ash of War system that we just touched on briefly. And that is because there are 3 ways to change the scaling of a weapon. One is Ash of War, one is to level it up, and one is through affinities. So let's talk about each of those 3 ways to improve or change the scaling of your weapon. But first, let's talk about what scaling is. So scaling of weapons goes from S tier to E tier. S is the best, then it goes A, B, C, D, and E being the worst. If you are a character that is pumping tons of strength, then you want to have as close to S tier scaling as possible. If you're a character that pumps tons of intelligence, then you want as much intelligence scaling as possible. That all makes sense, right? So a staff is typically going to have better intelligence scaling than a club. A big, heavy, 2-handed club. And a giant, heavy greatsword is typically going to have better strength scaling than a staff would. That all makes sense, right? It's really intuitive in that way. The scaling is what you would expect to be 9 times out of 10. Now, what happens when the scaling isn't good enough? Maybe the scaling is C, but you want it to be B, because if we look at our stats right here, we can see how much damage we're getting from the weapon and how much damage we're getting from the scaling. And if we improve the scaling, like this weapon right now has E tier strength scaling, but this is a strength character, so we're only getting plus 15 damage. What happens if we make that E strength scaling better? How is that going to affect the damage of this weapon? Well, we go here, we choose a Ash of War, and we can choose an Ash of War that has good strength scaling if we want. So we could pick this one right here. It says the strength scaling would take it from E to C. And look at that damage. Instead of being 95 plus 15, it's going to be 120 plus 97. So we are legitimately doubling the damage of this weapon by improving the scaling of it, right? Alternatively, if you want to use an Ash of War that doesn't improve the scaling as much, but you're later in the game where you have found all of the affinities, or at least the affinity that you want to use, you can choose a non-strength focused Ash of War, like this one right here, but then you can put the heavy affinity on it, which is going to overwrite the scaling. So we choose that. And now this weapon is doing 120 plus 97, and we're using the Ash of War that we wanted to use. So you'll find Ashes of War all over the game, and then you'll find these affinities throughout the game as well. And these affinities can change the scaling in a lot of different ways. So this is kind of like the final say on the scaling of your weapon, is the affinities that you find. Until you find all of those, you can modify the scaling of your weapon by choosing Ashes of War. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. You pick an Ash of War that you might not like as much because it's going to improve the overall damage of your weapon. And then later on, you don't have to make that concession because you'll have the affinities found, and you can choose any affinity that you want, no matter what Ash of War you pick. So it's just one more layer of power that your character gets access to as the game goes on. How else do you increase the damage of your weapon? Just go to your blacksmith, click strength and armament, and then you can choose the armament you want to level up, and you can take it from +0 to +1. See how right here it says +1. And if I do level this up, it's telling me how much the damage is going to go up for this weapon. This is a strength character, so we're going to see more gains if we come down here to a strength-based weapon, and we see that adding 1 level is going to take the damage from 103 plus 69 to 108 plus 75. And if we upgrade this enough times, this C scaling will eventually change to B scaling. And if we keep upgrading, it might even change to A scaling to further improve the damage. There's no way to know how much the scaling is going to improve by leveling it up, other than to try it out and see, or to look it up on a wiki. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a higher level character that has access to more of the systems that you're going to unlock as you play through the game, and you're naturally going to discover them. Now, if you want a video that's going to hold your hand through the early game a little bit more and show you where to go to get your early flask upgrades, your early weapon upgrades, and basically give you an incredibly OP start, I'll link that video in the description so that you guys have access to that. And that'll give you a start that'll basically set you up to dominate the entire early and middle game without any problems whatsoever. It'll make it so that your character is incredibly strong, right? It's basically the perfect start. It's as perfect as it can get. So just check that link out in the description before, during, or after this video. It's up to you. But we're going to continue on explaining all of the systems in this game for now in this video. All right, now that we have got your character started, let's talk about everything that you're going to get access to as you're playing through the game. So let's go through the menus first. Your equipment menu is going to be where you can see this top row is your main hand weapon. These 4 here are your projectiles, right, for your bows and things like that. And then the second row is going to be your offhand, which is usually going to be a shield or perhaps a bow. Now, it's important that you don't equip weapons that you're not using, because they're going to contribute to your overall weight, and that's bad for reasons we'll discuss. And then the third row here is the equipment that you're wearing. So your helmet, your chest, your gloves, and your legs. Those are the 4 pieces of equipment that you're wearing. Then you've got your talismans below that. Your talismans are going to give you permanent buffs to your character. This one here, successive attacks restore HP. This one restores HP when I kill an enemy. This one vastly raises my equipment load so I can carry more stuff, which means I can wear better armor without sending my equipment load into heavy, which is really important. And we'll discuss that here in a moment. Then below that, you've got your consumables down here. And for this section, I really wouldn't recommend putting anything more than you need. So it might be tempting to load up everything that you find and slap it on this bar so you could use it. But the problem there is if you have to tab through 6 items to get back to your heal, a lot of times you'll be dead before you're able to use your heal. So what you're going to want to do is keep it to the bare minimum on this tab. If anything, just have your flask of Crimson Tears, perhaps your FP flask next to it, right? You could have your flask of Cerulean Tears if you're using a lot of FP. And then your flask of Wondrous Physick is also a nice one to have if you would like to have that equipped on here. But no more than those 3 really is what I would recommend. And anything else that you want to have quick access to, I would go ahead and throw it out here on your pouch. So right here, I've got my Spectral Steed. I've got my lantern so that anytime I walk into a dark area, I can turn that on like right now. We can go ahead and activate that and boom, now our lantern's on and you can see that we've lit this place up quite a bit. So that's what this pouch will be for. Anything else that you want quick access to that you don't want to clutter your heal bar with. Now, there's a lot of really important information on this side when you're changing these things out. This is telling you what your stats are. So if you put on this item right here, raises my dexterity. So if I take this off, my dexterity would go down by 5. So it's 66 now, remove it. Now my dexterity is 61. So it's giving you a running tally of your stats. It's telling you how much health, FP, and stamina, just in case anything you put on modifies those stats. And then there's the 2 most important stats to really be aware of on this page, and that's going to be your equipment load. You never want this to say heavy. You want it to say light, or the best place for a new player is probably to be somewhere in medium. So you're going to get the most damage mitigation without going into what the game calls fat rolling, or well, the community calls it fat rolling. And what that means is it's adding up my equipment load. It's giving me a tally out of 88.1 right now. So this is raising my maximum equipment load so that I can wear more before I land in heavy equipment load, okay? Because it's a percentage based thing. So if you go over 70% of your equipment load, then you start fat rolling. So if I go ahead and put on a really heavy piece of gear, like this Lionel's armor, put that on and look, it sent me into heavy equipment load. So now when I roll, my character does 2 things differently. The roll doesn't travel as far, which means it's not nearly as effective for getting out of enemy attacks. So it's going to make it harder for me to evade enemy attacks. It's also going to take me longer to stand up. It takes ages to stand up after you do your fat roll. And if we do the same roll here with medium load, we put that other armor on, so we're back in medium load. We lightened our load a little bit. Now, look how far we travel. You know, we go all the way across here and we get right up, okay? So the lighter you are, the easier it is to dodge attacks. However, the more damage you're going to take if you fail to dodge an attack. The heavier you are, it's harder to dodge attacks, but if you do take an attack, you're going to take a little less damage. Generally, the amount of damage reduction you get for going into heavy is not significant enough to justify all of the extra hits that you're going to take as a result of being in heavy, right? It's not going to offset it. It's a losing ratio for you there. So try not to go above medium. And there's a lot of ways to adjust your equipment load, right? You can put points into endurance. This is going to make it so you can wear heavier gear. It's going to increase your max equipment load. And you can also wear talismans like this one to increase your equipment load. The next important stat here is going to be poise. So poise is another one that a lot of people miss. You want to be 51 or above or 101 or above. What your poise is going to do is it's going to give you the ability for someone to hit you without interrupting your attacks. So if you're mid swing and someone hits you and your poise is below 51, it's going to stagger your character and your character's not going to do your attack. So then you'll have to start your windup all over again. And this really becomes a problem if two things are attacking you and you're trying to attack back, but they keep staggering you every time one hits you and they kind of alternate. So you really want your poise to be over 51 so that you don't get stun locked by enemies staggering you over and over. So 51 or higher, that's what you're aiming for there as soon as you get a chance. Discovery is just your ability to discover items in the game. And if it says 110, that means you're getting a multiplier of 1.1. And then your memory slots, that's how many memory slots you've unlocked. We'll talk about magic in a second and how to unlock all those memory slots. And then the one really important piece of information about this screen right here that a ton of people miss when they're using the gear. There's hidden stats on gear that you have to read the description of the gear to know that it's there. So for instance, this turtle shell, right? If we click on it and then we go to this menu, and down here it says switch display mid, right? So we press that and this menu comes up instead. And we read it and it says the turtle is a symbol of tirelessness and this shield boosts stamina recovery speed. So by wearing this shield, we're getting stamina recovery speed boost. You wouldn't know it unless you came to this screen and read the description of the item. And a lot of shields have descriptions like that, where they have some stat that you have to read to know that it does a whole extra thing that I didn't know about. Similarly, so does the gear. So if we look at this helmet and we go to that same screen, it says slowly replenishes HP when your HP is reduced. Cool. So you get a little bit of life regen passively just by having this gear on. So whenever you find a piece of gear, if you're up to it, take a look at those hidden stats that are on that screen. Again, to get to that, you just go to this screen right here. You click on the gear and then you press the button to switch out the middle view and you can see what it does. Not every piece of gear is going to do something, but a lot of them will. Next, we have item crafting. Item crafting is where you're going to come to use that crafting kit we purchased earlier. You can craft anything that you can see here. And if you hover over it, it's going to tell you what you need to craft it. And so right here, it says I have number held. I have 8 of these already. So I really wouldn't need to craft more unless I really wanted to. And then to craft it, I'm going to need 2 dew-kissed herbs. I'm going to need 1 crystal grave moss, and I'm going to need 1 sacramental bud. But I have 35, 24, and 376. So I would easily be able to create another 24 of these. My limiting reagent here would be crystal grave moss. Okay, cool. So that's how that works. And you can craft these to your heart's content. So anytime you see a material that you can pick up, I really encourage you to do so, because you never know when you might need it for something. And you're going to be running by a lot of them. So just spam that pickup button as you're running through them. You don't have to stop and observe too closely what it is that you're picking up. Just make sure you grab them. They're littered all over the game. Next, we have the inventory. So you come down to the inventory. The inventory is going to tell you something important just by looking at these that a lot of people don't realize. If we look at the flask, you see the symbol in the top left. That means it's equipped in our equipment tab. And this here, it's got the pouch symbol. So that means it's equipped to our pouch already. If there's no symbol like that, that means it's not equipped. So we don't have our flask of cerulean tears equipped, and we don't have our memory of grace equipped. Your memory of grace, you lose all your runes if you use this. So another way to get back to your grace anytime you die. I feel like the memory of grace is best used like if you happen to get stuck somewhere in the game. You're literally stuck and you can't get out of that spot, like you're glitched. That's when you would maybe use memory of grace. I would save it for a situation like that. Although I've never had my character get stuck in this game ever. So it's not like something that would happen very often. So you don't have to worry about it much. And you can tab through this and look at all of the different tabs here. You've got your ashes, which are not to be confused with your ashes of war, right? Your ashes are your summon. Your ashes of war are the weapon skills that you can place on your weapons. There's a lot of, things you would expect to be in here. You got bolstering materials. That's going to be all your upgrade materials. You've got key items. This is going to be your great runes and your wondrous flask materials. You'll collect these. I'll do a whole section on the wondrous flask and how it works in a moment. And the same with everything else. I'm just going to go through these tabs real quick, but I'll talk about them all in more depth in a second here. And then here we've got our incantations and our sorceries. Remember, sorceries are the ones that require you to wear a staff. Incantations are the ones that you want to have a seal on for. It's just basically 2 different types of magic with a ton of variety in both. The last one I just want to make sure you're aware of here is your info tab. And this is where you'll come. Sometimes you'll pick up an item. It'll be a quest item and you'll have to look at a map. So you'll want to come into your inventory and then look in the info tab here. Tab over until you see this screen with all these things that you found. It'll be quest items or notes that you bought, giving you hints at what you're supposed to do next for a quest and all kinds of stuff like that. Those kind of items will be here in the info tab when you find them. Next, we have status. Your status this is your character status. Quite literally, it tells you your level. This character's 137. He's got 6,000 runes and I need 124,000 runes for the next level. It shows our stats here, our health, FP, stamina, equipment load, similar stats that we've seen before. And then here we've got defense and damage negation. So it's telling us how much defense we have and how much damage negation that works out to. And then we've got our resistances. Now, one thing you can do here, because there's a lot of information on this screen that's not super clear as a new player, you might be wondering, for instance, what does Vigor do? Or what does Mind do exactly? Or what does Endurance do? And that's where you would come here and you go to Help. and you can tab down to menu explanation. This is also, interestingly, the only way to pause the game is to come into this menu and then click menu explanation. This will actually stop all the enemies around you. So if you need to get up and step away from your game for a minute, feed the kid, go to the bathroom, attend to the wife or the husband, whatever you got to do for a second, this is how you do that. You'd come into this menu right here and go into the help menu. By hitting that button, coming down to menu explanation, boom, game's paused. With the status menu, you can check your level, attributes, base stats, and more. So if we go to menu explanation instead, now we can see what everything does by hovering over it. So level, a cumulative figure that represents your overall attributes. All right, so that's just your level. You know what your level is. Runes needed. Vigor, attribute governing your HP, also affects your fire resistance and your immunity. Okay, so this is why reading these is kind of useful because nobody really expects vigor to also randomly encompass fire resistance, but it does. Then you've got mind, attributes that determine your FP, also affects your focus. And don't worry, we'll go over what immunity and focus are in a second so that you know what those are. Endurance, attribute that governs your stamina, also affects your robustness. This attribute also determines how heavy your equipment can be, right? And we talked about all of that, how much your equipment load is, how big your stamina bar is. That's determined by your endurance here. And then robustness, we're going to go over that in a second as well. Strength, the attribute required to wield heavy armaments. So it's just saying that, usually the heavy weapons require strength and they scale with strength. The more strength you have, the more damage those weapons that scale with strength are going to do. We'll talk about weapon scaling in a moment because it's really important. So Dex is going to, of course, scale well with Dex weapons. If you're using a Dex weapon, you want to pump Dex and it's going to make the Dex weapon do more damage. But also, interestingly, Dex reduces your casting time of spells, softens your fall damage, and makes it harder to be knocked off your horse. So if you have high Dex, you're going to take less damage when you fall. It's going to be harder for you to get knocked off your horse, and your spells that you're casting are going to cast faster. However, if you are a spellcaster, I don't recommend pumping a ton of dex because there's easier ways to hit the cast speed cap than putting all your points into dexterity. For example, you can use a talisman to get a massive buff to your cast speed. And then we've got intelligence. Intelligence is an attribute required to perform glintstone sorceries, also boosts magic power of intelligence scaling sorceries, and improves magic resistance. Faith is going to be a stat that's required for using your incantations. A lot of them will have a faith requirement for you to be able to cast them. And then it's also going to boost your magic power of faith scaling incantations. Pretty straightforward. Arcane is your discovery one. This is the weird one. It also affects holy defense, vitality, and certain sorceries and incantations. Discovery is just the chance that an enemy drops an item that they can drop. The higher your discovery, the more likely they are to drop that random drop that they can have. Holy defense is your defense against holy, and then vitality we'll cover in a moment. So let's come over here real quick. We're going to skip over to this side because we just talked about those stats over there giving us immunity, robustness, focus, and vitality. So let's talk about what those are. Immunity is your resistance to various poisons and rot. The higher the number, the lower your susceptibility, governed by your attributes as well as defensive gear and additional effects. So immunity is just your resistance to rot and poison. Now, another thing to be really aware of with the poison meter is if you roll through poison, like I just did there, it's going to continue to go up even after you step out of the poison. So normally it's only going to go up while you're walking in it. Now, it won't necessarily go all the way up, but it's going to go up for a long time. Here, it went just up to where it was about to fill all the way up, but it didn't quite make it. So I would have got very lucky here. So whatever you do, don't roll through poison and don't roll through rot. If you happen to have some soap on you, you can use that to remove the poison or rot from your armor to stop the buildup. Robustness is your resistance to blood loss and frostbite. So when you see somebody trying to use bleed on you or cold spells, robustness is what's going to help protect you from dying to those things. Focus is your resistance to sleep and bouts of madness. Being put to sleep is not the end of the world, but having your madness bar fill up definitely can be. Vitality is your resistance to death. This is another meter that fills up. So death, sleep, madness, frostbite, poison, and rot, right? These are all meters that fill up when you're exposed to them. For poison and rot, if it fills up all the way, then you're going to start taking dot damage as it slowly drains the meter over time. So for a long time, you're going to take this dot damage that you're going to have to heal through or go touch a grace to get rid of, or use one of your consumables to get rid of. When the blood loss meter fills up, you're going to take a huge chunk of damage, just like when you fill the enemy's blood loss meter. The damage you take from blood loss or from hemorrhaging effects, the damage you take is equal to a percentage of your health, plus some base damage. Once the frostbite meter is filled up, your character is going to explode in damage, and then you're going to take 20% increased damage for 30 seconds. If your madness meter fills up, you're going to take 100 damage plus 15% of your total health. And it's going to cause you to lose 30 plus 10% of your max FP. And then death, when the death gauge fills up, you die. Pretty straightforward on that one. Don't ever let the death meter start filling up. If you see this meter filling, get away from the enemy that's causing it. Usually it's like a frog looking thing, and they are a pain to fight for that very reason. So you may have noticed that your stats increase your holy resistance, they increase your fire resistance, your magic resistance, but none of your stats increase lightning resistance, interestingly enough. But there's things like talismans that will increase your lightning resistance. So there are ways to increase it, but it's not going to come from your stats, unlike these other forms of damage here. And then as far as physical strike damage, slash damage, and pierce damage go, if the enemy does a piercing motion, like they're pushing the point of a sword into you, that's going to be pierce damage 9 times out of 10. It is what it looks like it will be. Slash, again, if they are using like a slashing motion with a sword, you're going to be taking slash damage. And then strike damage is going to be damage from blunt weapons like hammers and maces. Physical damage is going to be any damage that isn't one of the other forms of damage. So if it's not holy, if it's not lightning, it's not fire, and it's not magic, it's physical. And some attacks can have a combination of these damage types. You know, it's possible for a fire imbued physical attack to hit you, and so on. So that's what all of these stats mean and how to increase them. One thing I will say is you're never going to level up one of these stats to increase immunity, robustness, focus, or vitality, right? You're never going to level these up that way. You're going to use items to get these resistances when you need them. And same for your elemental resistances up here. You're going to use items to get those resistances when you need it. You're not going to spec into intelligence when you need it, right? One thing you will spec into though is vigor, because that gives you health. And you always want to get your vigor to about 60. After 60, the diminishing returns make it so that it's really not worth it to put more points into vigor. We already touched on messages, and then there's multiplayer. We'll save that for the end. For those of you guys that are wanting to jump right into multiplayer, you can skip to that section. Then you've got your system menu, which is where you'll be able to come in here and you can toggle some settings if you want to. One important one, if you're playing on PC, you might want to come into sound and display settings here and then change device for on-screen input. If you're using a gamepad, put it on gamepad. If you're using keyboard and mouse, you can change that to keyboard and mouse here. Okay, now let's deep dive more of these systems. So one thing that you have to be aware of is for weapon upgrades, at first you're going to use the little anvil we found at the very beginning of the game, but quickly you'll eventually unlock your round table and you'll get this guy, Smithing Master Hugh. He's going to be where you go and you go to strengthen armament. And here you'll be able to strengthen the armaments that you have. The first screen is going to be the ones that you have equipped, and then the other screens are going to be all the ones that you have in all of your storage and inventory everywhere. So if we look at our equipped ones here, we've got this Bloodhound Fang level 9. In order to take it to level 10, it's telling me that it's going to cost 3,840 runes, and it's going to cost 1 Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone out of the 3 I have. So I have 3, but it's only going to cost 1. Cool. So I can definitely afford to do this. What's the outcome going to be? Over here, that's what it tells us. It says the physical damage is going to go up from 325 plus 333 to 345 plus 371. So we get a nice damage increase. The scaling is going to stay at C strength scaling and B dex scaling. So sometimes you'll upgrade a weapon and the scaling will go up. So the dex here used to be a C scaling weapon. And what that means is the better the scaling. So S tier scaling is the best. A is second best. B after that. C and D, right? The worse the grade, the worse the scaling. So an S tier weapon is going to go up in damage a lot more every time you pump that S tier scaling. So B tier scaling, I would want to put lots of points into dex on this weapon as opposed to pumping strength on my character, because I'm not going to get as much damage out of putting points into strength as I will for dex. Now, just like everything else, there's breakpoints in this game where you get way more out of certain points than others. The more points into dex that you get, the less you're getting out of it until you get to a point where, you know, we hit a breakpoint and people generally say it's not terribly worth it to go beyond that. Well, your damage scaling stats here, strength, dex, int, faith, arc, you generally don't want to go beyond 80. 80 is the cutoff point there. So that's how you're going to upgrade weapons, shields, bows, all kinds of stuff. You're going to come to your Smithing Master Hugh once you've unlocked him. Until then, you'll use that anvil. He can also put Ashes of War on an item, and he can do Ash of War duplication. So if you want to have a certain Ash of War that you found on more than one item without having to take it off and then put it on the new one each time, you can duplicate your Ash of War, and then you can put it on one item, and then you can put the duplicate on another item, and you can sell stuff to him because he's an NPC. And that will work. All right, now let's quickly talk about stats and breakpoints, because just looking at a few graphs is going to make it really clear as to why the breakpoints are where they're at in this game. Hopefully this makes it real easy for you to understand, okay? So we've got a couple graphs from Extra Life here, and if you look at them, it shows us that Vigor is pretty unique in that each point you put into Vigor gives you more health than the point before it did. So all the way up to 40 points into Vigor, at which point you get 48 points of health for a single point of Vigor. That is massive. So you're going to want to get your Vigor up to 40 as soon as possible. This is going to make bosses a lot easier because you're going to be able to take quite a few more hits before dying. Then at 41, it drops way down, but it's still a substantial amount of health at 26 per point of Vigor. And then it's going to slowly get down here. And then at 61, it slams down to 6 points of health. At this point, you have 1900 points of health. So adding 6 to that is nothing. You're not feeling that. It's not saving your life, right? And then after that, it just gets worse. And that's why we don't go above 60 points of Vigor. Now let's take a look at Mind. Mind is what's going to give you your focus points or your mana points, in other words. So Mind, again, the more points into Mind you get, the more you're getting out of those points in a slightly more linear fashion here, all the way up until the mid 50s, at which point it starts sliding down. And then at 60, it plummets and you start getting much, much less. So it's very rare to see someone really go past 60 with their Mind. For the same reason, it's just the diminishing returns are too great here and you're not getting a lot out of it. Now let's take a look at Endurance, a stat that everybody is going to want to invest in, and look at the breakpoint for this. The breakpoint for Endurance is 50. There's no reason to go beyond 50. The next 3 levels after 50 give you 0, in fact. So they really didn't want you to go past 50. Up until that point, you're getting between 1 and 2 points of stamina per point that you pump into Endurance. I think most people's builds will end up with between 30 and 50 points of Endurance. And then if we look at Endurance equip load effects, you can see here that you can see your equip load gains per level. Up until 25, you're getting really substantial gains. Then it drops down and then it works its way up again all the way until 60. But you'd be quitting right here around 50 anyway, just because you're not getting any more stamina out of it. So, but at least now you can kind of see what's happening with your equipment load for each point that you're investing. You're getting just over 1 point of equipment load per point into Endurance. When it comes to Strength, you're going to see that you're getting diminishing returns here. You've got one breakpoint at 53, and then you've got another breakpoint at 80. And typically you don't see people going beyond 80 with Strength, Intelligence, Dex, or Faith. Because of these breakpoints, the graph looks pretty much the same for all of those stats. Now, the other thing in this game that you can upgrade besides your weapons is your summons, right? So how do you upgrade your summons? Now, just a disclaimer, this is a very minor spoiler. It's something that you do early in the game, but it's also 100% missable. And a lot of people do miss it. It's a quest, and every quest in this game is real easy to miss. If you don't want any spoilers at all and you're okay with completely missing an entire upgrade system, skip ahead to the next section, all right? For those of you that don't want to miss how to upgrade your summons just because you didn't talk to one NPC that you needed to talk to and then did their quest, not knowing, what you're going to do is, here's where you start the game right here, the first step, okay? You're going to come up here and you're going to hang a left, go up this path, and you're going to go to Stormhill Shack, and there's an NPC there, and you're going to talk to her, and her name is, she's right here, by the way, her name is Roderica, the Spirit Tuner. So you're going to have to come here and talk to her, and she's going to ask you to go find an object for her and bring it back to her. And that object is going to be in here, in Stormvale Castle. So if you thoroughly explore Stormvale Castle, somewhere on the lower floors, you will find the object that she wants you to find. As soon as you find that, or whenever you're done with Stormvale Castle, just swing by and visit her. If you were thorough, you most likely have it in your inventory, and you'll bring it back to her and she'll be like, oh, awesome. And then she'll go back to your round table with you. Your round table is going to be your base of operations in this game. You're going to unlock it at some point, and it's going to be down here in the bottom left corner of your map. Now, there's a neat little trick to get to it anytime you want to. Instead of dragging your cursor all the way over there, which can be a pain in the butt, you can just press Sights of Grace, which is Y on the Xbox controller here. And then you can press X. See down at the bottom, it says X, go to round table. Now you don't have to drag your cursor all the way there when you open the map on the other side of the world. By the way, when she's at the round table, she won't be standing here next to this fire. She'll be standing somewhere else in your round table. Can't miss her if you wander around, don't worry. And as a rule of thumb, anytime an NPC appears in your round table, talk to them over and over and over until you exhaust all their dialogue and they start repeating themselves. That's really important. And they're going to be giving you good information on what you should do next and what you can do. And they're all going to have little quest lines that you can complete for them. And I highly highly recommend that you do those quest lines before you come here, okay? Before you come to Redmane Castle, try to complete as much of those quest lines as you can, because that's going to be point of no return for a lot of quest lines. So if you haven't done them yet and you get here, you won't be able to do them anymore. Just a heads up. So put this place off as long as you can, because the fight against Radon, one, it's a tough fight. You don't want to come to it too early. And two, it's going to lock you out of quest progress there. All right, next, let's talk about multiplayer. Okay, so you're going to be able to find and craft this item called Feral Calling Finger Remedy. It's real easy to craft. This is what you're going to be able to use to summon a friend. Now, as long as you and your friend have the same password set, you'll be able to see their game, they'll be able to see yours. And if you have a password set, random people won't be joining your game, which is really nice. If you don't want random invaders coming into your game, just come in here and set a password, and then that won't be a problem for you. I didn't pick this password, my friend did, I swear. So if you're summoning a friend, you're going to use the Feral Calling Finger. If you're the friend that's being summoned, you're going to use the Tarnished Furled Finger. So what you'll do is you'll go to the same grace that they're at. You'll both interact with the grace, you'll stand up, and then you'll use your items respectively. You'll see a gold summoning sign. It basically looks like this. It looks like this message, but it's gold instead of white. And you'll interact with that and it'll say, do you want to summon that person? And you say yes. Then there's the Duelist Furled Finger. You can leave a red summoning sign to play competitive multiplayer with someone if you want, which allows someone to summon you for a fight. And then there's the Bloody Finger, which you can use to invade another player's world. Now, if you successfully invade someone's world using a Bloody Finger and you kill the host, you're going to receive a rune arc. Now, you have to choose where you want to invade. So you go to the map and you click show multiplayer status, and you can see places where you could go for a fight. If we go here and then we use our Bloody Finger to invade another player's world, attempting to invade another world, both near and far. And we'll try to invade another world now. And the game's telling me it's loading me into someone else's game. And so now I am joining another person's game. They're just playing the game, and now I'm here and I'm hunting them down. Or they were waiting for me and they're hunting me down. We'll find out. So we spawn in and now we have to look for the person, and our compass tells us what direction they're in. See the gold mark? It says they're this way. And until you get close to them, it's going to continue to tell what direction you should run. And now there's two people here. So it looks like we're going to fight both of these guys, and we're going to go ahead and let them kill us here. So you can see, so we lost all of our runes for dying there. If we would have won, we would have got the rune arc, which is what we can use to activate our rune ability up here, which is very powerful. You do want to have lots of rune arcs. They're going to be great. If you get stuck on a boss fight, you'll probably pop those before you go in each time. So you can go through them pretty fast. As you saw in that time, I went there to kill him, and then he summoned somebody else to help kill me, basically, so that it would have been a 2v1, which could be a tough fight, but it's also a lot of fun. So that's how multiplayer works. Before you walk up to a boss, you'll see the statue we talked about earlier. That's going to allow you to summon a friend. And once you kill the boss, your friend's going to get unsummoned from your game. Just be aware. And then that summoning sign is gone forever. So if you've killed every boss in the game, then it becomes impossible to summon your friend into your game, unfortunately. All right, now let's talk about talismans, because they are important. As you progress through the game, you're going to unlock more talisman slots until you can wear 2, 3, and even 4 talismans at a time. Basically, unlike other things in the game, you don't just run to a certain area and you pick it up. The talisman pouches are going to be unlocked predominantly by completing the story. So you're just going to be playing through the game. You're going to get to a point where you complete a major objective in the game and you're going to get a talisman pouch as a reward. You can look up exactly what those are if you want to, but really there's no point in rushing that, because then you'd just be rushing your way through the entire game. And this is definitely a game that I would encourage you to take your time in, explore thoroughly every zone before moving on to the next one, find all the caves, find all the catacombs, and all of that good stuff. And you can see there, even though when we died and dropped our runes in PvP, our runes did show up on our compass and our map as well. So we could open up our map and head to that location to pick up our runes if we happen to have a lot on us when we went into that PvP engagement and died. Now, early in the game, I mentioned how you can use your bow to disable traps. Now, occasionally you'll find a flame trap like this. So what you do to disable this so that it doesn't set you on fire and kill you immediately is you equip your bow and then you shoot it from distance. And this is going to disable it. Upon doing this, it's going to sink into the ground and be harmless. And all I'll say about those things is is definitely jump on top of them and see if they'll take you somewhere cool. A lot of times you can use them as a little elevator. Now, one thing that happens in this game is occasionally you're going to kill named dragons. And so you'll come to this little island out here, just west of where you started the game. You'll come up to this and you'll be able to use those dragon hearts as a currency to buy these incantations from this vendor here, this little shrine. So that's what the dragon hearts are for that you find, and how you get them is killing named dragons. It's incredibly missable, and again, the place that you spend them is the Church of the Dragon Communion over here off the coast, just southwest of where you start. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to get here. You got to figure that out on your own. Now, one thing you can do is every time you see a merchant out in the open, you can kill them. And there's really no negative to doing this. When you kill them, you get a bell bearing, and then you can bring the bell bearing here to the twin maidens that will be in your round table, and you can give them the bell bearing, and then you'll be able to buy those items from the twin maidens anytime you want to. This is a good way to avoid having to remember which merchant is selling what and where they were located, and then having to head all the way back out to them. Instead, when you find a merchant, you can just kill the merchant, grab its bell bearing, and then come back here, give it to the twin statue. Now you can buy those items from them anytime you want to. Happy hunting. Now the game has a neat way to hint you towards catacombs. So when you see a statue that looks like this, you interact with it, and it's going to point a line in the direction of the catacombs. So it's pointing this way. So all I have to do is head this direction, and I should be able to find the catacomb. Okay, it looks like it's going to be down there. So I'm going to have to run around this. And if we run to where it was pointing, boom, we have found ourselves a catacomb. So when you see that statue, interact with it and follow it to its destination. Even if you don't want to run the catacomb yet, you know, at least go unlock the site of grace so you can come back to it later. Similarly, if you see a candelabra, you can interact with that, like a ghostly candelabra out in the wilderness. Just interact with it and a ghost will appear. And you follow that ghost and he'll take you to a cave or whatever that you can explore. Lead you to them. So that's a good way to find them sometimes if you haven't found them yet. So another thing that will happen is you'll have walls like this that are fake, and all you have to do to get rid of them is smack them. This is going to scar you in a really real way, because now once you find one of these, you're never going to trust any wall that looks like it could possibly perhaps be a door. And a lot of times you'll be wrong when you hit it, but sometimes you'll be right, and it'll be a fake wall that you can smack, it'll disappear, and then you can walk through and find treasures, alternate paths, sometimes entire secret dungeons. All kinds of really crazy stuff can be tucked behind those fake walls. So if it looks like it might be a fake wall, you know, maybe it is a fake wall. If it looks like it might be a doorway, or if there's a sign saying, hey, smack the wall right here, go ahead and try it. They just might be telling the truth. Now, this next section is one of those ones where every once in a while, a developer will make the perfect game, but then there will be this one piece of the game that is so bafflingly bad that it just doesn't make sense. It's like a mechanic who was building a car and realizes he forgot a door, so he duct tapes a piece of plywood over it. That is what the computer keybinds are in Elden Ring. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you what the keybinds are, because in some situations it just literally doesn't tell you, which is just one of the reasons why it's awful. So let me open up the keybinds. So we're going to go to System, Keybinds. Here we are. Now we're looking at the computer keybinds. One of the most important keybinds in the game is Map. Where's Map in here? I'm glad you asked, because it's not here. You cannot rebind it. It doesn't even tell you what it is. By the way, opening your map, that's G. That's going to be a really important one you're going to want to know. And that's just the first problem with these keybinds. Let's go ahead and set the keybinds to default here. So everything up here so far, so good, right? You want to change to walk, you can tap Alt. No problem. Moving forward, sideways, strafing, WASD, that makes sense. Dodge rolling on space. It sounds weird, but trust me, that's actually the best place for dodge roll. You do not want to be hitting F, aka you don't want to have to take your finger off D when you're running sideways to slam F to dodge roll. Space is where you want dodge roll. F for jump, that's okay if you can put it on your mouse somewhere. If you've got a button on your mouse that you're not using in the game, I would recommend putting it there. That works out really well. That way you don't have to take your fingers off of WASD to jump. Trust me, that's going to feel the best if you can do it. Crouching, standing up, I rebound this to C because that was the next key, is slightly more intuitive, just as easy to reach, but X is fine here. Now the problem really begins right here. Switching sorcery and incantation, switching your item. So this is your flask, by the way, down here. So in order to toggle through your flasks to get to your heal, it's saying you should take your fingers off of WASD, move them all the way to the other side of your keyboard and hit the down arrow. I mean, okay, so that's obviously not going to work. Nor is it going to work to tab through your incantations or your sorceries by taking your fingers off WASD mid-combat and going to the up arrow over there, right? That's just not going to work. So what I recommend here is mouse wheel up, mouse wheel down. This is going to work really nice, actually. We can make this work. Again, if you have a mouse with extra keys on it, feel free to use those here, take advantage of them. So this is going to be serviceable. Don't worry, we'll get into what all of these are doing in a second. And then if we come down here, light attack is left click, heavy attack is going to be shift plus left click. Okay, that works. Guard, aka block, is going to be your right click. That makes sense. Skill, shift plus right click, or control. Yeah, I don't love either of these. If you want, you could set it to the number 1 on your keyboard or the number 2, right? Skill and use item. Changing skill. Skill is going to be your Ash of War, the skill that's attached to your weapon. Then we've got here use item, which is bound to R. Again, you could use 1 to this. Item is going to be your flask that heals you, or your mana flask that's giving you your mana back. That's what R is right now. So change that to whatever's comfortable for you. And then you've got event action, E. This is really important because this is how you're going to interact with NPCs, open objects, open doors, open chests, all of that stuff. This is your interact button. It's also something else that it's not listed here that's really important. This is how you get to your pouch, which is going to be essential for mounting up. So if you hold down E, you see the option down in the bottom left, it changes to our pouch. And that's where we're going to be able to put things like our lantern. So there we go. We turn on our lantern. We're going to be able to put our mount there, throwing knives, all kinds of stuff. Most importantly, though, you're going to always be using that lantern. You're always going to be using your mount. So hold down E, and then to get to those, it's shift and mouse wheel up or shift and mouse wheel down. It's not going to let me mount because I'm inside this cave right now. It's going to feel a little bit awkward to control it like that at first, but the muscle memory will kick in soon enough. Don't fear. Now, to use an incantation, what we're going to do is equip a seal. So we've got a seal in our left hand there. A seal is a type of weapon, right? And then if you're on PC, what you're going to do is right click, and that's going to use your seal. Alternatively, if you had a spell there, you could right click to use your spell. You'd have to have a staff equipped though. Okay. With these keybinds, it's going to be right click to use your spell and to use your incantation if the weapon is in your offhand, if the seal or if the staff is in the offhand, which is going to be the left box there. So hold down E to access your pouch, mouse wheel up, mouse wheel down, or shift plus mouse wheel up and shift plus mouse wheel down to access those 4 boxes. G is going to be open your map. Q is going to lock onto enemies. R to use your flasks. Mouse wheel down to scroll through them. Use the next one with R. Oh, and sprint, you hold down spacebar. You hold down spacebar to sprint, and you tap it to dodge roll, and then you've got F for jump. And I think that's all of the default keybinds plus the 2 that we changed so that you could access your spells and incantations and your flasks without having to take your hand off of WASD and reach to the other side of the keyboard. So yeah, like I said, it's wild that the default keybinds are so bad by default. And on top of that, that they do such a poor job of communicating what each of these binds is actually doing because of the fact that some of them you have to do in combination. Some of them aren't even listed on here. So hopefully that was helpful. Sorry for the rant. Okay, next let's talk about Deathroot. You'll start finding Deathroot, and over here in the west side of the map, you'll be able to interact with a NPC called Garong, the Beast Clergyman. And he's going to give you an item. And after he gives you this item, anytime you're near Deathroot, you're going to get a message on your screen that says Beast Eye Quivers. So that's alerting you to the fact that you are near a Deathroot. Now, Deathroot can occasionally be found on Tibia Mariner bosses as well as inside of caves. So if you head into a cave and you see the message pop up on the screen, Beast Eye Quivers, that means that you are near Deathroot and you need to go find it. And then after you do find it, make sure to swing by Gronk and get your reward. Every time you turn one in, he'll give you a reward until you get to his final reward. And that's everything. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a legend. If some of this was still a little bit confusing, try the game for a day or two and then watch it again, and you'll be amazed at how much clicks when you've got a little bit of time in the game. I hope you'll consider liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment to help with the algorithm if you enjoyed the video. Massive shout out to my channel members for making these massive videos possible. And a massive shout out to the newest member of the channel, Dylan Hutchinson. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to become a channel member for behind the scenes footage, a private Discord channel, and more, click the link in the description or hit the join button below if you've already subscribed. Be sure to share this video with a friend if you found it helpful, and if you're not sure what to do next, check out one of these videos right here. I'll see you in the next one.